Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. The 100 Acre. Wood was a place of warmth, laughter, and endless jars of honey. Christopher Robin's friends were friendly, innocent animals whose lives were a cozy lesson in friendship and love. It was a world of safety, where every problem was solved with a hug. In Blood and Honey, when Christopher Robin grows up and leaves the woods behind, his childhood friends don't take kindly to being left behind. Their innocence rots away, replaced by rage and hunger. Pooh and Piglet are no longer playful companions. They are primal, feral killers. This isn't polished horror. It's a gritty, low-budget nightmare that thrives on its wrongness. Pooh, wearing a crude mask, turns into a hulking, silent figure of pure dread, while Piglet becomes a frenzied, knife-wielding creature. The woods that once filled the air with playful songs now filled with screams. The film thrives on corrupting the safe and the familiar, transforming childhood comfort into bloody carnage until you can't look at that silly old bear the same way again. Bambi, The Reckoning. Wide-eyed and wobbly-legged, Bambi danced through the fields, the very picture of innocence, unaware that tragedy could strike at any moment. His story was a tender tale of growing up, loss, and finding strength, a childhood memory that should be warm and safe. In Bambi, The Reckoning, that tender childhood memory is twisted into something feral and violent. The gunshot that took his mother doesn't fade into a tragic lesson. It festers, warping Bambi into a creature of vengeance. The gentle fawn is gone, replaced by a hulking shadow, antlers like spears, eyes black with fury. The film takes the delicate childhood memory of Bambi and rewrites it with blood and fury. The forest, once with springtime light, becomes a hunting ground where Bambi stalks the men who dared to make him prey. It's surreal and grotesque, a deer stepping into the role of executioner. What was once a tragic lesson becomes a furious tale of retribution, proving that nature has its own way of getting revenge. By the way, if you like horror movie content like this, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks. Anyways, Pinocchio's Revenge. Pinocchio's story is a classic cautionary tale about a puppet who longs to be a real boy. His journey is one of innocence and moral lessons, where he learns to be brave, truthful, and unselfish to earn his wish. In the 90s, before Pooh picked up a sledgehammer, horror quietly tried its hand at another childhood icon. Pinocchio's Revenge is basically, what if Chucky, but wooden? The story follows a defense attorney who brings a life-size Pinocchio doll home, only for it to be linked to a child murderer and a series of strange occurrences. This isn't the wooden boy who wished to be real. This is the wooden boy who wished to kill. The film never fully commits to whether Pinocchio is actually moving on his own or if the daughter is channeling something darker. Instead, it stumbles awkwardly between psychological horror and slasher chaos. It's campy, clunky, and not particularly scary, yet its bizarre premise and the unnerving stare of the wooden puppet make it disturbingly memorable. Snow White, A Tale of Terror. Forget the chirping bluebirds and cheerful dwarves. This film drags the story back to where it began: the dirt, the blood, and the nightmare fuel of old folklore. This isn't a bedtime story, it's a gothic fever dream. This version doesn't just want Snow White gone. Sigourney Weaver's Queen Claudia is consumed by jealousy, grief, and a creeping madness that black magic only amplifies. Weaver doesn't play her like a cartoon villain. She plays her like a woman rotting from the inside out, venomous and pitiful all at once. Opposite her, Snow White isn't some dainty princess waiting for rescue. She's dropped into a brutal, unforgiving world where survival comes not from purity, but from clawing and bleeding her way through. What makes this film sting is its atmosphere. The castles aren't dreamy towers, they're tombs. Shadows coil like predators, candlelight flickers against damp stone, and every reflection in the mirror feels cursed. Violence lands heavy, real, and jagged. There's no fairy tale gloss here. Snow White, A Tale of Terror respects the old roots, reminding us these tales were never meant to comfort. They were warnings, dressed in death and despair. Cinderella's Curse. Consistently portrayed as the shining example of goodness and grace, the story of Cinderella has always been depicted as the symbol of the be good, stay kind, and your dreams will come true fairy tale. Cinderella's Curse laughs in that story's face, tears it to shreds, and soaks the pieces in blood. There's no glass slipper here, no fairy godmother with a sparkling wand. The only thing shining in this version is the wet gleam of fresh gore. Cinderella is cursed, twisted into something vengeful, and instead of waltzing into happily ever after, she drags her victims into the dirt and writes her destiny with a blade. This film doesn't pretend to be anything other than a simple revenge tale. What it lacks in subtlety, it makes up for in sheer grindhouse energy. Ever secretly wish Cinderella would finally snap and deal with her cruel stepmother and stepsisters? This movie doesn't just grant the wish, it makes it messy. Don't expect pumpkins or friendly mice. Expect squeals, splatters, and a fairy tale gutted until nothing innocent is left. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. A boy who never grows up, who sneaks into bedrooms and whisks children away to a magical island, has always carried a hint of unease. Yet, the story is still portrayed as a whimsical adventure about eternal youth and imagination. Neverland Nightmare dives into that creep factor and turns it into a full-blown horror. In this version, Peter isn't playful or heroic, he's a predator. Neverland itself becomes a hunting ground, a place where children vanish and laughter dies in the shadows. That childhood longing to never grow up? Peter's obsession with eternal youth turns it into something monstrous, cult-like, and unhinged. The film's brilliance is how it warps nostalgia into dread. Familiar faces are twisted. The Lost Boys are expendable pawns. Wendy isn't safe, and even Captain Hook feels more like a desperate victim than the villain of legend. Every second star to the right becomes a warning. Once Neverland bleeds, bedtime stories feel sinister, and the magic of youth hides a predator waiting in the dark. Alice in Frightland. Alice in Wonderland was already a strange tale. A curious girl falls into another world, eats mystery food, and chats with animals that probably shouldn't talk. Its whimsy, however, always gave it a sense of charm. Alice in Frightland doesn't add whimsy, it strips it away and replaces it with nightmare fuel. Instead of colorful tea parties and playful riddles, this version gives us distorted creatures, grotesque body horror, and a wonderland that feels more like a descent into madness than a quirky daydream. The Cheshire Cat isn't grinning, it's baring teeth. The Mad Hatter isn't eccentric, he's deranged. What makes this work is the surreal edge. The visuals feel like a fever dream gone rancid, all warped colors and unsettling angles. Wonderland's nonsense rules suddenly feel threatening rather than charming, and every whimsical character is one step away from ripping your face off. It plays on the idea that Alice in Wonderland was always a little creepy, a world where nothing makes sense, everyone smiles too wide, and you're never really safe. Alice in Frightland just embraces that darkness completely. Scary stories to tell in the dark. If you grew up reading scary stories to tell in the dark, chances are you traumatized yourself before you even knew what a real horror movie was. Stephen Gammell's grotesque illustrations weren't just creepy, they were nightmares captured in ink. The film leans fully into terror. Instead of being a disconnected anthology, it ties several classic stories together through an overarching plot. A cursed book writes new horrors into existence, forcing a group of teens to face tales that haunted their childhoods. The film's brilliance is how it honors the tone of the originals, embracing the grimness and hopelessness of the books. The creatures are brought to life with the same unsettling energy that made the illustrations infamous. Harold, the murderous scarecrow, and the pale lady, whose blank, bloated stare could freeze anyone in their seat, appear on screen with an uncanny, off-balance look. Monsters triumph, fear lingers, and hopelessness drips through every scene. For newcomers, it's proof that childhood fears never leave you. They just evolve, sharpen, and grow teeth sharper than you remember. Gretel and Hansel. We've seen countless takes on Hansel and Gretel, but most follow a simple fairy tale structure of two kids outsmarting a terrifying witch. Gretel and Hansel goes in a completely different direction. Forget the candy-coated nightmares where two kids outsmart a witch. This version leans fully into mood, atmosphere, and slow-burning dread. From the very first frame, it's clear you're not stepping back into the fairy tale you remember. This version is a twisted coming-of-age story about power, temptation, and the seductive pull of darkness. The film's atmosphere is a masterclass in quiet terror. The visuals are drenched in eerie blues and earthy shadows, like wandering through a dream that won't let you go, a place where every tree and flicker of light could hide danger. Alice Kriege's witch is a masterclass in subtlety. She doesn't need shrieks or flashy theatrics. Her menace is in the stillness, in every word that feels like a trap. The film isn't a jump scare factory. It's about tension, silence, and imagery that crawls under your skin. Red Riding Hood. The story of Little Red Riding Hood is a horror slam dunk on paper. A girl lost in the woods, a predator in the dark, a wolf in disguise. It's nightmare fuel baked right into the premise. This film taps into that horror premise and turns it into a werewolf mystery. The wolf isn't just a monster, it's a presence, a creature that could be waiting behind any tree, or worse, sitting across from you at the dinner table. That creeping paranoia that anyone in the village could secretly be the beast turns neighbors into suspects and family into threats. The werewolf is less about jump scares and more about psychological terror. The film's atmosphere carries its weight too. Fog-choked streets, flickering torches, and a distant bone-deep howl. When the wolf strikes, it doesn't just kill, it tears apart the illusion of safety, reminding everyone that even home is a cage with no locks strong enough. Beneath the melodrama is a raw folk horror tale about isolation, superstition, and the terror of never knowing who to trust. The film strips the fable back to its core warning: the path through the woods is never safe. Which of these you thought were twisted? Are there any others you think we should have included? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more horror content.